History has been made as the Republic of Ireland is going to their first ever Women's World Cup. So let's talk about it. Wow, what a game that was. I mean, what a day of games that was in general. It was completely packed and stacked with not only the World Cup qualifications, you had the U17 World Cup also kick off, as well as some very good friendlies that took place as well. But the stars of the show were definitely the Irish ladies, who won a very hard-fought battle against Scotland to make sure they got that one-way ticket into the World Cup. It was the lone substitute for Ireland, Amber Barrett, to score the only goal of the game. Amber got that goal in the 72nd minute, and it was pretty much down to Brosnan in the defense to make sure they're going to keep a clean sheet, really. And if you've been able to watch Brosnan's campaign with Ireland this past year, you know damn well she did not look like she was going to concede a single goal. And that 5-4-1 formation really sunk in. They were playing quite a deep, low block. I feel like any team would in that situation. Fahey, Quinn, Caldwell, I mean, they were putting their bodies on the line, tackles up and down. You know what, at some point I was like, they're going to concede a penalty. Speaking of which, they actually did give away a penalty in the first half, but Caroline Weir did miss. Again, Brosnan denied Weir, just because Brosnan has been on fire. Scotland was doing pretty well in kind of overwhelming them. They had a lot of blue shirts in that box, as you would, which would push usually defenders to get a little bit reckless. Again, it's a high intensity game. There's a lot on the line, and giving away a penalty, getting a handball in there, just kind of that nitty gritty, dirty play would happen. And until that final whistle was blown, it could have gone either way. For Scotland, this is obviously a little bit disappointing. They did have quite a good kind of run of games leading up to this one. They knocked out Austria last week, which was quite a big task. Going into that game, they were actually ranked the underdogs for that one. Martinez Losa, which is the Scottish manager, does usually come out with a 4-2-3-1. That's exactly what he came out this time as well. And though they do have good quality star players, you know, I speak of Weir, Martha Thomas, Cuthbert, it's a long list of experienced players as well. Lisa Evans, she's been through in and out of the WSL in Germany, has been through a lot with the Scottish team as well. So experience-wise and quality-wise, they do have that. This game, though, they were playing pretty wide. There was moments of impatience almost. There was moments of going back a little more often than they should have. I don't really like seeing Lisa Evans in the fullback. I kind of do like her going up a little bit more forward, which he does have an emphasis on the fullbacks pulling up forward. But that does cause a little bit of the midfield to be kind of disjointed, which is odd because they did have the majority of the possession this game, but they were kind of lacking that fiery instinct or that kind of one run that looked very, very dangerous. It was almost a little too predictable, a little too slow in a way. Cuthbert and Weir underperformed just a little bit for me this game as well. I think I would have loved to see them be on kind of their club form. I also can't help but think of Kim Little. Obviously, she's retired from international duty, but watching any Scotland game and when you watch the midfield struggle just a little bit, you have to think about Kim Little and what could have been if she was in there. But ultimately, the Irish have just been very, very disciplined. If you were able to catch their game earlier this year with Sweden, they gave him a fair amount of issues, and so they clearly have been on a bit of a mission. We also have to give it up for McCabe. I mean, she is the youngest captain for the Irish ladies, and to lead them up to the World Cup is such a big accomplishment for her personal career. And I remember a few years back, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, I read an article released by The Guardian talking about how the Irish players were pushing their federation to do better in terms of treatment, environment, and overall facilities, to which the federation responded quite quickly. They were able to invest and start to meet those expectations, and to see that journey come from 5 years ago where these players did not even really have the facilities to train for a football game, let alone qualify for the World Cup, is just a great storyline. I'll actually leave that article in the description. I'll have to go hunt it down, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere. Federations like what's happening in Spain, the RFEF, can definitely take a few notes down of what a federation can do to really maximize the potential of your own players. The other European team that also still has a chance of going to the World Cup, they're heading into the playoff, is Portugal after beating Iceland 4-1. This one was quite of a dramatic game. It was actually really fun to watch, but in the space of 4 minutes, there was a red card and a goal for each team. Jessica Silver again being all over the pitch for the Portuguese, as well as Diana Silva on the other end. The commentator was going crazy trying to distinguish the two Silvas between each other because they're both on the wings and they both are so active on the ball, and I thought that was a little funny. But overall, a great shift from the Portuguese team there. I think that red card for Iceland really hurt them bad, especially it was a fullback, the starting 11 fullback that had to leave the pitch. And Portugal, like we mentioned, are very dangerous on the wings. The players that they have on those wings it's key to how they play their football. Our other team that was able to also go straight into the World Cup is Switzerland after a very dramatic 2-1 win over Wales. This was also the furthest that Wales have reached a World Cup qualification, so despite them not going through, they did quite literally write history for this time around. Roberts actually opened the scoring for them off a corner, but just right before the half, Switzerland was able to equalize. Second half, Switzerland pretty much the majority of possession. They were dictating how the game was going, and they came close multiple times, but on that 90th whistle, it was also a draw, so they had to go into extra time. And before you even know it, in 120 minutes, literally the last minute, they get that final goal. I mean, I'm pretty sure my neighbors probably heard me jumping up and down. It was quite upsetting, I think, for the Welsh players because they have put in a good shift. Again, last game before this one, they did go up to 120 minutes, so going 120 minutes back to back probably does put you at a disadvantage. Switzerland didn't have a game before this. But hey, that's the name of the game. You could really see the kind of the agony on the Welsh players, and you can't help but feel bad because they did make it this far, and it kind of would have been maybe a little bit sweeter for them to get that final step in, but the game is just a little too ruthless sometimes. So what happens now that we have those 3 teams, 2 have gone in and 1 are going into the playoffs? So obviously this is an expanded World Cup. There's going to be 32 nations, and I think when UEFA were putting this together, they had a goal of making sure the playoffs were the most confusing kind of playoffs that they can come up with, because I hated how they put it together. First of all, I don't really like how there's some teams that have to wait until February to find out if they qualify for the World Cup. I think that's just keeping it way too long. I also think February is quite a busy time of the year anyway. There's a lot of European stuff still going on. That's when a lot of finals start to kind of ramp up and happen. And if you're a coupler that needs to play a semi-final domestic League Cup and then come out next week and play a World Cup qualifier, I think the risk of injury is quite high, and we've seen how injuries are. It's literally week in and week out you hear an ACL injury. A few months before the World Cup, that wouldn't be ideal, but so maybe not the most ideal kind of design, but hopefully UEFA in the upcoming years is able to change it, because I just don't think it's very convenient. So out of the 6 confederations, there's 10 teams. Out of those 10 teams, 3 are going to go through, so there's 3 more slots, and this playoff is to really secure who the last 3 are. How it works, there's going to be 3 different pots: pot A, pot B, and pot C. Both pot A and pot B have 3 teams, whereas pot C has 4 teams. Now, 4 nations out of the 10 are going to be seeded according to their FIFA rankings, and each confederation cannot have more than 1 seeded team. 1 seeded team is going to go into Group A, another seeded team is going to go into Group B, and 2 seeded teams are going to go into Group C, because Group C does have an extra slot. So for Group A and Group B, this is exactly how it's going to look like. You're going to have the seeded team on, let's place them on top of the table. The 2 unseeded are going to go against each other. The winner of this is going to face the seeded team, and the winner is to go through. But for Group C, it's a little bit different because it's 4 teams, so each unseeded team will play a seeded team. The winner of each of those 2 games is going to face each other in a final, and the winner is going to take that last ticket into the World Cup. The draw for these teams are going to take place on Friday in Switzerland, so it's coming up very, very soon. I'm actually kind of glad they're not letting us wait, because I would have hated to wait. During all those kind of shenanigans, there's also going to be a friendlies tournament with New Zealand, obviously New Zealand being the co-host country, so getting a friendlies tournament with some of the seeded and unseeded teams, the losers and the winners, is going to be kind of a good preparation for the World Cup. One thing that I do hope UEFA does kind of change in the future is making sure that these playoffs take place at all one time. The Scotland and the Republic of Ireland took place 2 hours after the 2 qualifiers, which, I mean, it literally kicked off after the last game had finished, which is odd. There's extra pressure maybe on the players. Scotland had to beat Ireland 3+ goals to go through, so again, there's that kind of like mathematical, what if this happens, and I'm not really sure if that should be kind of the narrative going into the game. I feel like that should be the narrative that is going on as these games are played together. Anyways, I want to hear your opinion on what you saw from Scotland versus Ireland. What are your thoughts on Ireland and just kind of the journey that they have been on for the last 3 years? One major important question: which statue do you think Ireland is going to be putting up? Is it Brosnan, is it McCabe, or is it Amber? The goal scorer, the rock solid keeper, or the captain herself, Katie McCabe? I need to know. Also, another reminder, our next video, Saturday, October 15th, a very, very, very exciting video is coming. It is not your regular analysis content. Rather, I am talking about the current state of football in a certain country and the way that they are going about women's football. Really, that's as much as I want to say. I want to tell you more about it, but I guess we'll have to wait for Saturday, so don't miss out on Saturday. Make sure you follow our Twitter to see the trailer that is going to be dropping on Friday, so you're going to have a little bit of a idea of what it is going to be on Saturday. Make sure you also subscribe to us here on YouTube to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game. I will see you later. To anybody watching up to this point, Saturday's video is going to be really fun. Probably my favorite one so far. Actually, it is my favorite one so far.